Hi, everyone. It is Tracy Chamberlain Higginbotham of Women Ties here this morning for another fantastic Women of the Week interview, this time with our member Sharon CassanoLochman, who is the founder of Ontario Shore Publishing. And before I ask Sharon some questions, because she's an expert on writing and publishing, I just always like to say where I've met the woman that I'm interviewing and why they seem special to me. And so Sharon came to one of our Rochester Women's Ties luncheons, and I met her at the door. And then I remember when she stood up to introduce herself, she just had this light and this positivity and this optimism about her. And I think you'll see that through this interview as well. And I think she actually offered the fact that she was looking for women to contribute to a book that was going to be a compilation of different stories. And so I, of course, always suggest that women entrepreneurs say yes to anything like that. And so I said yes. And Sharon and I have had a really wonderful relationship since then. I actually asked her to assist me when I was publishing my very first book, and I couldn't have done it without her. So I'm very happy to introduce to you Sharon. How are you today?
I'm great, but you're going to start me off crying right off the bat. Thank you. Oh, you're so sweet. You're so sweet. I love you to death.
Hi.
I love you to death. And I do remember walking into that luncheon and seeing you and I was uncomfortable. I didn't know anybody there. Jill Bates had invited me and she hadn't arrived yet. And you just made me feel so at home as you always do. So thank you. Thank you. I'm doing great. Thank
Oh,
you.
good. Well, thank you for joining us. I really wanted to interview you because, I think you and I have something in common, which is, we've always loved writing. And not everybody, if this is a woman entrepreneur listening, considers themselves a writer. Some people are very intimidated by it. And I got into kind of more professional writing back when blogs became, I think it was 2008 when I started my blog, when blog became an option for marketing for women entrepreneurs. And it didn't cost a lot of money. It just took your time to write. And so I was hooked on that immediately. So where did you get your passion for writing? Has it been lifelong? Has it just been recently because of a career? Tell us a little bit.
Well, that's a really good question. And I could start off by saying I have a lot of college professors that probably find it very humorous that this is what I'm doing for a career. um, in fact, one of them had used my writing sample as an example of so many, because it had so many things wrong with it, what not to do. But what he had said, and I'd forgotten for over 20 years, was that he first said, "This writer shows promise." But I didn't hear that for like 20 years. All I heard were all the mistakes that I had made. And then later I was like, oh yeah, I did start that way. So I sort of had a passion for writing, but I never wrote. I'd sit down and I'd think, oh, I'd like to write a story or something. And I would get started. I was 13 years old was my first thought of writing. And I got the paper ready, put my name on the top of the lined paper, and that was it. I didn't know how to write. I didn't know how to approach writing. I didn't think I was worthy to write. I didn't think I have a talent to write. I didn't excel in English in any way, shape, or form as, for school. So I just didn't think it was for me. But I did have stories pop into my head and I'd go and I'd write them down. And they were, picture books that would just come through as a whole and I'd put them aside and so on and so forth. But it was 2013 when it really hit hard that this was really the internal nudge, and through, a spiritual awakening, that it really became my life passion. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy because I didn't know how to write. I know as a teacher, an elementary school teacher, I knew how to teach children how to write, but I wasn't able to do it myself. So it took a lot of, trial and error and a lot of practice. And I just kept at it and I kept studying the craft and and just kept working it. And that's the story.
Oh, that's really neat. I remember my mom was a very creative, is a very creative, and was a very creative mother, and so she always journaled, and so my sister and I were always inspired to have journals and to write. And I remember submitting a poem for a poem contest and won it, and it got printed in a book, and that was my first published piece. I think I was in 6th grade. I don't know where it is now. It'd be really interesting to try to find a copy of it, but sometimes we're inspired by others to write. I think what I always say to women entrepreneurs that say to me, oh my gosh, I just don't even know where to begin is, it's like anything. Sometimes it just takes a certain commitment of time, repetitively, a commitment and a goal to do it. But what do you say to some of the women that you work with that want to write? What do you tell them to do to make them believe that they have it within them to be writers?
Well, the first thing I tell them is that they need to write, and they need to write frequently. It doesn't have to be a long time to sit there and write 10 or 20 minutes a day. It can be a journaling thing. It can be something that you're just going to sit and write your thoughts for the day, whatever's bothering you, whatever you can think of from your past, or whatever you want to put down and put it aside. And you need to give yourself permission to not go back and reread it if you don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
It's the art and the act of writing that's super important to start with, and to get into the habit of writing. Here's the other thing, is to write without any perceived goals, because goals, they make pressure for us. Like, I'm going to write for 6 pages in 30 minutes today or whatever, and you don't make that goal or that deadline, and then you feel bad about yourself, and the next day it's a lot harder because yesterday you didn't do it. So just sit down and just do it without any goals. You're just going to write for the joy of writing, and give yourself permission to make mistakes. Don't worry about how you're writing. If you have good sentence structure, it's more important to write from your heart. When you write from your heart, the pen will flow. And then I would say the biggest thing that people need to practice while you're doing these little writing things would be practice writing what you're seeing, smelling, feeling, hearing, thinking, and getting it down that way. What are those things? Because again, you're tapping into your heart space. And when you do want to write something that's going to be done even professionally, or a book, or whatever it is that your goals are, you're already way ahead of everybody else that's just starting off, because you're writing and you're showing, and you're not telling. Like, I could tell you, I am nervous today before this interview. I was very nervous. Or I could say, man, I broke out in a sweat, my hands were clammy, and I was all goosebumps, and so that would be showing versus telling. So that's important to learn that also. And it's easy to practice with your daily writing routine.
Right. I've always, and maybe it did go back to the fact that my mother had us out journaling. We were always outside. We didn't have a TV growing up because she believed we should be outside enjoying, sports, or we lived on a lake. So maybe I was very much inspired by outside senses to begin with. But I do find, and I would, say the same thing that you're saying, I try to write from my feelings perspective. And I think that's why some people like the way I write, because I try to paint the picture from an emotional perspective, even if it's a business topic. So yeah, touching base with those 5 senses, that's a really great point.
It really is. And if you're writing from a business standpoint, you need to remember that you still need to write from that same heart-centered place. Because if you're writing something for your business, is it not your goal to be writing to help someone? It's not your goal. If your goal is just to write something so you can sell something, people are not going to be interested. They're not going to read it. And they're not going to push the next button to the next step.
Right.
But if your goal is to really be of service to humanity or someone else by, providing your service, whatever it is, and you write from that heart place, you're going to grab them, and they're going to do a double take, and they're going to slow down and really pay attention to what you're saying.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. What are, I guess if you could say to somebody listening who has just still not enough confidence to get going, would you just say get going? Is there something else that they, right now when they get done with this video, they're going to take out a pad of paper and they're just going to free write? What would you say just to get them on that first step?
Yeah. Okay. So right there, they're just going to get that pen and be like I was when I was 13. They'll put their name at the top of the paper and then what?
Right.
Okay. So there are a lot of great strategies out there. I would suggest a writing prompt. And you can do a search on the internet for writing prompts. I have them on my business Facebook page. They could scroll back. I had done them before Christmas and Halloween, and there were some that were there. Or they can give themselves a writing prompt. And a lot of people don't realize they can do this. Now, when I first started, I was going everywhere for writing prompts to help trigger that writing, and then I realized, wait a minute, I can just do my own writing prompts. What is it that I want to write about? Well, I can ask myself a question. What is it that's so causing me so much stress today? Why do I feel so agitated? Right there's a writing prompt. And then answer the question.
Right.
You can, what is your favorite childhood memory? What was my favorite childhood memory can be a writing prompt and take you right back there. A writing prompt if it's business oriented. What is the message that I'm trying to give to my potential client? Right there. That's a great place to start. What are the 3 important messages I want to get across to the world or humanity? There you go. And start that way. Super easy, super important. Sometimes sitting there with that blank page is really overwhelming because you don't want to make a mistake. So start with a question, make your own writing prompt or look them up on the internet. It gives you a little bit of direction until you can get those juices flowing freely on your own.
Right. Now, how many books have you published? Because I can see some behind you in your bookcase. How many have you written over time? And are you surprised that you've written so many? And does it become addictive?
Yeah, I am surprised. I can't tell you number-wise how many I've written. I have the 3 volumes of the spiritual verses and the 2 fiction, Strand on Thin Ice and then Man with a Sand Dollar Face. And those 5 books were published within 3-month period.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like writing crazy, like a crazy woman. And then the picture books. So I have a lot of different projects going on at the same time. I have a couple dozen picture books in various stages.
Oh, wow.
I have one that I am hooking up with an illustrator right now to get that one out ASAP. I'm in the middle of revisions on another fiction novel. I have the 2 volumes of the anthology that you took part in. Those will be coming out soon. That was delayed by about a year because we had so many stories that came in last minute that we all of a sudden realized we have 2 volumes because the book would be so big nobody could afford to buy it.
Right.
So we had to separate it. So that's taking a while. And I've been published in other anthologies with other women writers that have courses that they offer and stuff. I don't know, 8 or 9 books plus more coming. So
wow, yeah. That's wonderful. Something that you, when you and I were working together, and I published my book, Under the Rose-Colored Hat, because of my battle with alopecia and really how kind and compassionate people were towards me. It wasn't about really necessarily telling my story about alopecia as it was trying to share the goodness and the kindness, the people that would come up to me because they thought I was a cancer patient or cancer survivor because I was bald and wearing a pink hat. And so I felt like I had to get that message out into the world. But, and so that was my first book. But before that, I did make contributions to Chicken Soup for the Soul series. I have articles that are published in magazines. So I know that do you still have a course that teaches women about writing and submitting for magazines and other publications? That might be an easier first step than writing a full book.
Oh, absolutely. I have writing for magazines. I also have writing for short stories. That course, I've just released that course, and that's actually at an introductory price right now. So that I would say if anybody has any interest in writing a short story before they tackle a big novel, I'd say grab onto that before the price goes up. But the writing for magazines is so crucial for a lot of people. Let me explain why. If you're a writer or you want to be a writer, maybe you want to be published traditionally, or maybe you don't, but you just are a little unsteady right now. Writing for magazines is a great way to develop credibility as an author, get your feet wet, and it's the beginning stages of writing and publishing. And it's wonderful because you don't have to worry about dialogue, you don't have to worry about plot. or anything like that, what you do with, writing for a short story or a novel. It's a great way to get started. And they're usually short. They're usually less than 1,500 words. And you'd be surprised what you can write about. And the magazine market, they're always looking for new articles. And most magazines pay. A lot are free, but there are some that pay up to $500. So you can earn income and get credibility. And then that's for the writers. But if you're a business owner, entrepreneur, it's also a great way to tap into another market. Okay, somebody else has paid a lot of money for publicity and to develop a huge market, and that would be the magazine itself.
Mm-hmm.
So why not tap into their market by writing for them? Whatever it is that you do with your business, there's a magazine out there for you, and you can get instant credibility as an expert in your field when you get published. And a lot of people in business, they spend a lot of time writing newsletters or blogs and so on and so forth. It takes a lot of time to write those. Why not just step it up a notch and use the same information and submit it and maybe get published in a magazine, and then share the link to the magazine in your blog or your newsletter. Have it on your desk in your office for people to say, hey, yeah. And they're like, oh, wow, she was published. Was she was in a magazine? Well, she must know what she's talking about, or she wouldn't have been published. So it's great for the business owner as well to step up and do it. And again, it doesn't have all the technical parts to it that, a novel or short story would have. So they're usually, the intro, 3 supporting paragraphs and a conclusion.
Right.
And how much easier could it get than that?
I know that's so I really encourage women to do that. I think the summertime is, well, I guess depending on what your business is and when your busy period of time is, but we're still coming off COVID and, still people not being right back exactly to their schedule. So I think the summertime for me is always the perfect time to be inspired to start writing. So I really encourage women to do that and to take your lead. And I've been in a number of publications, and it really is exciting when you see your name in Women's Day, or, in the Post Standard, I wrote a column for 11 years. And, I always say too that when it comes to it's more technical writing in the sense that it's PR and press releases. But again, the media is always looking for stories, 365 days a year, every month, 24 hours, yes. Especially because that content then goes online, like you said, and yes. You can share. So I really wanted to interview you to really encourage women to think of that whole spectrum, from a full published book to the short stories, to the magazine articles, to even starting to get comfortable, like you said, daily writing with a prompt, and or including that in your blog as well. I know just before we end this interview that you have a 31-day challenge. Is that something you can explain to women and how they can partake in that?
Yes, I have a 31-day, it's the Inspirational Possibilities for the New You. And it is a 31-day challenge where you would receive an email every day for 31 days with a message. And it's because, let me just back up. So this challenge came through to me, as a whole, 31 days straight. And it was at a time when I had really low self-esteem and I had low self-worth. And the challenge came through, and they were spiritually inspired, divinely inspired messages. And they were just so beautiful. And at the end of the message, there was a request for one word, to write one word, positive word about myself. And so I did the challenge many times because I had trouble finishing the challenge personally. I couldn't come up with enough nice words about myself at the time to finish the 31 days. So I'd put it aside, and then it would come out again, and then I'd put it aside, and then I finally did finish it, the challenge. I was like, wow, okay, well, that's great, and then I put the whole challenge aside and had it in a safe place. And then I felt in December that there was a need to put it out for other women that are struggling with their self-esteem and their self-worth, because we're told so many stories throughout our life, through society, through our family, through, for example, a story that you're told in school. Maybe you've got a bad grade on an English paper, or writing assignment. And then right there, the story you interpret that at is that you're a terrible writer. Okay. And then you carry that story around with all these other stories. And then all of a sudden there's so many stories, you can't carry the whole story. So you just give them one word titles: unworthy, not talented, so on and so forth. So we have so many of these that we can't, see the light of day. And when we lose our power, we don't get to do what we're here to do. And we're here to work together as a whole to uplift humanity. And so when we don't feel good about ourselves, we're not doing our life mission. And so that's what this challenge is about. It's to challenge you for every day for 31 days to sit and reflect on the goodness of you. And maybe it's not through your eyes. Maybe one day it's the goodness of you through the eyes of another, someone who loves you the most, your mother, your father, your partner. What would they say about you in one word to describe you? A lot of the days are about our physical appearance because we are so stuck on that, okay, there's so much more to us. How would I know you with my eyes closed? Your essence. What's one word that I could say about you? What is your essence with my eyes closed? And so they're of all of that. So for 31 days, they go directly to your inbox and you read them. I say save them because life has a way of, knocking us on our knees every once in a while. And maybe we need another boost again. You could do the challenge again and again.
Yeah, that's, as you were saying that, there were two images that came through my mind. I was listening, paying attention, but then I was listening, and one of them was in sixth grade. My parents were going through divorce, and I wasn't probably realizing that I was a Spitfire at the time. And my sixth grade teacher gave us, one of those, report cards, and you're usually looking for the A and the B. And she had this written. She said, Tracy is very effervescent. Now, I've been sent out in the hall a lot, so I remember running home and saying to my mom, what's effervescent mean? Am I in trouble? And I've never forgotten that description of myself from this teacher, probably because I thought it was, something negative, but it is a good word for my personality. And so, it just, when you were telling that story, that's what came back to me. Maybe others listening will do the same thing. So thank God it was a good description and not a bad one.
But a lot of times we fail to hold on to the good descriptions, right, and we cling to the bad ones. Yeah. And that's what this is, a shift. We need to shift that mindset and hold on to the good, release the bad. We don't need that. It serves us absolutely no purpose. Right. And when you start to make your list of words, you're going to see, like, there are so many really positive things about you that you need to recognize. And it's not an ego thing. It's important to stand in your goodness and recognize your goodness and stand in your power and your ability to uplift the planet just through your effervescence.
Everybody can use the word effervescent if they want. I give everybody permission.
That's Tracy's word. She's willing to share.
I'm like Alka-Seltzer, Our humor. Maybe I've always said that I wanted to write a stand-up comedy routine of all the things I've learned about being bald. But I'll come back to you, Sharon, on that one at some point.
I think there's a book there.
There probably is. Well, because you've mentioned so many great ways that women can start writing and have this challenge, what's the best way for them to reach you so that they can do so? And I really hope that if you're listening to this point of the interview, that you take something away that strikes with you and that you start that writing, or become more creative. You finally believe in yourself because of some of the wonderful things that Sharon has said. So Sharon, what's the very best way for them to reach you?
They can go to my website, SharonCassanoLochman.com. They can email me at Sharon@SharonCassanoLochman.com. And I would suggest they follow me on Facebook. Look for me on Facebook because I do offer monthly free writing webinars to get you going. I give you some suggestions on how to work around those writing blocks, and I will give you some writing prompts to get those creative juices flowing. It's free, there are no strings attached to it, and it's a great way to also meet and be in the energy of some other really cool people as well. So I would suggest that.
Well, thank you so much for being on this call. I love seeing you, as you know, and it's prompting me to look back at that, to think about writing for magazines more again. I think the one book I did, and doesn't mean I don't have another one in me, but I love the concept of sharing our ideas, our business wisdom in magazines and publications too. So I hope people will look for information on that. I might retake the course again to remind me, but thank you so much for being you. Thank you so much for inspiring us all to consider being writers and to be kind to ourselves and think of maybe those few words that really lift us up every day. You are an inspiration, Sharon CassanoLochman. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Tracy. Big hug and love to you. Thank you so much.
Same to you. Thank you, everyone. You can find Sharon too on the Women Ties website. We have a directory of a lot of fantastic women like her. So make sure that you go there, womenties.com. Thanks so much. We'll be back again with another Woman of the Week interview next week.